Hello, everyone. Brother Al McClain with this week's stewardship video. And as always, before we go too far, here's a disclaimer. No advice should be seen as a recommendation or an endorsement, as I'm not a licensed financial advisor. This is for educational purposes only. You want to do your own research, or if you employ or have a registered investment advisor or someone operating in that capacity, that's what they're there for, to give advice. So we're going to continue on as we're getting into the Christmas season about don't stop, don't or stop digging. And this goes back to my spiritual father, Brother Harold Herring. Has the debt-free army. He used to always have a saying, when you're in the hole, stop digging. Meaning, if you're in debt, don't worsen it by continue to increase debt. And if you don't have any debt, then don't incur any, like for instance, during the Christmas holidays. So avoid it. And we talked about this symbol of this credit card should come with a warning. Misuse of this credit card is dangerous to your financial, emotional, marital, spiritual, and physical health. God warns us about the dangers of debt, and he admonishes us to save for future needs like Christmas that comes, as that's all we say, same time every year. So what we want to do, and let's say you're fortunate and you have no debt. Well, take this message to others. Become a advocate for living a debt-free life. And we said before, it's not a sin, but there's a stern warning by the Lord, as we see in Proverbs 22:7. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. In some translations, it says slave to the lender. So, as we said before, debt is not a sin, but it has a strong warning by the Lord of debt, and of course having too much debt, even if it's what the so-called good debt of a mortgage, because most people can't buy a home debt free. But you want to make sure it's not too much home regarding the debt to income ratio that you have. In other words, can I afford this home? Maybe I need to do lesser home in a superb neighborhood. Maybe I buy the low end at the superb neighborhood. The same thing when it comes to Christmas purchases. Uh, Look at creating a special holiday spending plan or budget that you have. Start to look at different ways that you cannot use that credit card. And again, ideally, this is a good time of year to start saving for next year, for 2026. So put in place maybe a habit of you start your savings on the Christmas year before. Now, one of the things that is coming with a warning, and this was a quote from a consumer advocate. It says, "We fear people will end up in financial trouble. Americans will spend a record $20 billion via buy now, pay later during the holidays." And I used Chat GPT to look up some stats, and about 35 to 40% of the buy now, pay later loans end up as long-term debt. So there is, a warning to that. In fact, it said for Cyber Monday, $1.3 billion was spent using buy now, pay later services such as Klarna, that's KLAR, Affirm, and PayPal. Over the course from November 1st to the 31st, holiday expected spending with buy now, pay later is expected to facilitate $20 billion in payments. And that says it's 11% year over year increase. So that's a potential landmine when it comes to debt. So with that, let's go ahead and go into the end of kind of earnings season. We've got just a few companies of weight, if you will, that are reporting. Lennar, which will be a home buying preview, if you will, when it comes to that economy. And we know we got the rate cut, but already people are saying, on the pundits are saying, that it still didn't affect mortgage rates, which kind of stayed steady, if not creeped up a little bit. Uh, We got General Mills that's reporting, and that'll give us an insight into consumer spending. Micron, of course, technology. FedEx, when it comes to shipping, are people shipping more during the holidays or has it gone down? We got restaurants, darting as far as eating out. And then again, another insight into the home building. KB Homes. And then we've got Carnival Cruise and then paychecks. And that's kind of related also to people working and our payrolls increasing or decreasing. And then Winnebago, that's going to give us some insight into the recreational. Our people have more discretionary spending. So it's an interesting mix of companies that are reporting this week, but I don't expect it really to move the market. It's going to be interesting to see with the housing in Lennar as well as KB Homes. So here's an idea. Once again, not meant as a recommendation, but do your own research. So I used ChatGPT to say, where are some exchange traded funds that have a lot of exposure to Klarna, which is that buy now, pay later, and Affirm and PayPal. And it came up with three exchange traded funds. Here are the symbols: FINX, iPay, and then ARC funds, uh, which is the Kathy Woods family of funds. So FINX, here's the top 10 holdings. So you could use this one or two ways, the way we've said it before. You can either just find the companies that they're invested in, like there's PayPal, there's a firm, and just invest in those, or use the exchange traded fund. It gives you exposure to some other funds that are dealing with digital payments. So you can see here it's Coinbase out here. Here's Fidelity National Insurance Services. Over here, you've got some credit card companies exposed in iPay, but it also includes Affirm and PayPal. And then ARC Funds, it's got some that it's in the financial digital technology disruptor world is what ARC Fund tends to. But later on, if you go past the top 10 holdings, there is Affirm and PayPal also in there. So here are some three exchange traded funds. Again, do your own research. And once again, you could do the funds, or maybe you look at the individual company, or as we've said before, Fidelity has what we call stock slices, and Charles Schwab has that also, where you do incremental amounts based on dollar amount versus share amounts in those companies. And as we close out, let's take a look at the overall market. Had some selling, QQQ. So the week going into it was looking good. Then we sold off on a Friday, and it could be based on the jobs report and that we're starting to get economic data and that we already know the Fed rate cut was built in. But then you had Chairman Powell and some other governors saying, well, we think we'll hold for now. We may not be getting any more rate cuts anytime soon. So the market responded to that. Same thing when it came to SPY. So that's it for this week's stewardship video. Again, want to have a joyful Christmas and holidays going into New Year's with family, friends, but want that peace of not overspending because, yes, spending in December, of course, you're going to start to get those bills in January and February. So, with that, that's the stewardship video for this week. As we always say, remember, Jesus is Lord. Therefore, he's the owner, but we play the important role of being the faithful steward. We'll see you next week.